Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. Pull the trigger, Alaric. If you can't look at me as a man, you might as well end me right here. The rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, mirroring the storm raging inside the dimly lit study. Julian stood with his back against the mahogany desk, his shirt soaked through and clinging to his shivering frame, while the man who had been a looming shadow over his entire childhood stood 5 feet away. Alaric, the Iron Duke of the city's underworld, held the antique revolver not with intent to kill, but with a trembling hand that betrayed a lifetime of restraint finally snapping. The air was thick with the scent of ozone, expensive scotch, and a desire so potent it tasted like iron in the back of Julian's throat. This was no longer the dynamic of a guardian and a ward. The lightning flash illuminated the hunger in the older man's eyes, a predator finally acknowledging the prey he had sworn to protect but died to devour. 3 weeks earlier, the world had been a grayscale portrait of grief and debt. Julian stood by the open grave, the mud staining the hem of his dress shoes. He didn't cry. Tears were a luxury for those who had loved the deceased, and Julian had only feared his father. Richard Vance had been a charming man to the public, a brilliant architect of the city's skyline. But behind closed doors, he was a gambler who bet with things he didn't own. In the end, he had bet his life and lost. The funeral was sparse. Rain fell in a miserable drizzle, discouraging the fair-weather friends who used to drink Richard's wine. As the priest droned on about a piece Richard didn't deserve, a black limousine pulled up to the cemetery gates, looking like a sleek beast prowling through the mist. A man stepped out. He was tall, broad-shouldered, clad in a charcoal 3-piece suit that cost more than Julian's entire university tuition. An umbrella was snapped open by a bodyguard, shielding the man as he walked toward the grave with a military precision. It was Alaric Thorne. Julian's breath hitched. He hadn't seen Alaric in 5 years, not since the night Alaric had argued violently with Richard and stormed out of their lives. To a 10-year-old Julian, Alaric had been the nice uncle, the one who brought gifts and actually listened when Julian played the piano. To 22-year-old Julian, Alaric was a myth, a man rumored to control the shipping docks and half the politicians in the city. Alaric didn't look at the coffin. He looked straight at Julian. Time had been kind to Alaric, chiseling his jawline into something sharper, streaking his temples with a dignified silver that contrasted against his jet-black hair. His eyes, the color of hardened steel, locked onto Julian's with an intensity that made Julian want to step back. "The service is over," Alaric said, his voice a deep baritone that vibrated in Julian's chest. He didn't offer condolences. He offered a command. "Get in the car, Julian." "I have my own ride," Julian replied, though his voice lacked conviction. He was drowning in his father's legacy. Sharks were already circling for the debts. "Your car has been repossessed, as has the house," Alaric stated calmly, closing the distance between them. He towered over Julian, radiating a terrifying heat in the cold air. "Your father didn't just die broke, Julian. He died owing the kind of people who don't send collection agencies. They send cleaners." Julian felt the blood drain from his face. "So? What is that to you? You haven't been around in years." "I made a promise," Alaric said, his eyes darkening. He reached out, his leather-gloved hand brushing a wet lock of hair from Julian's forehead. The touch was brief, electric, and possessive. "I promised I would keep you safe. You are coming with me." It wasn't a request. It was an extraction. The ride to Alaric's estate, a fortress of glass and steel overlooking the city, was silent. Julian sat rigidly, acutely aware of Alaric reading a dossier on a tablet next to him. The power dynamic was suffocating. Alaric was the savior, the billionaire, the father figure. Julian was the orphan, the destitute student, the burden. But beneath the fear, there was something else. A flicker of curiosity. Why had Alaric returned now? If he knew about the debts, why wait until Richard was dead? "You'll stay in the East Wing," Alaric said as they entered the foyer, the marble floors echoing their footsteps. "My staff will handle your needs. Your university fees have been paid. The debt is settled." Julian spun around, shock overriding his fear. "Settled? It was millions, Alaric." "What?" Alaric paused at the foot of the grand staircase. He turned, looking down at Julian with an unreadable expression. Because you are a Vance. And because you have talent. I've heard your compositions. It would be a waste to let them break your fingers. The mention of his music and the threat to his hands sent a shiver down Julian's spine. I'm not a child anymore, Alaric. I don't need a babysitter. Alaric's lips quirked into a ghost of a smile, devoid of humor. No, you are certainly not a child. If you were, this would be much simpler. The days bled into weeks. Life at the Thorne estate was a gilded cage. Julian had everything he needed, a Steinway grand piano, a library, gourmet meals, but he had no freedom. Security guards trailed him if he left the grounds. Alaric was a phantom, leaving before dawn and returning late at night, smelling of cigar smoke and danger. The distance was deliberate. Julian could feel it. Whenever they were in the same room, Alaric kept a physical barrier between them, a desk, a table, a piano. He wouldn't look at Julian for too long, as if the sight of him was painful or tempting. The realization came slowly, like ink spreading in water. Julian would catch Alaric watching him from the balcony while he swam in the pool. He would see the way Alaric's knuckles turned white gripping his wine glass when Julian wore fitted shirts. The uncle dynamic was a lie Alaric was telling himself to keep the beast in the cage. Julian, fueled by a mix of gratitude and a reckless need to shatter Alaric's composure, began to push back. It started with small defiances. Skipping dinner. Playing chaotic, angry dissonances on the piano late at night. Then, it escalated. One evening, Julian descended the stairs dressed for a night out. He wore a silk shirt unbuttoned low enough to be scandalous, tight black trousers, and a defiant smirk. Alaric was in the foyer, adjusting his cufflinks. He froze. His gaze raked over Julian, heavy and hot, before snapping back to his face. Where do you think you're going? Out, Julian said breezily. I'm young, Alaric. I need to live. There's a club downtown. You are not going to a club, Alaric growled, stepping into Julian's path. It's not safe. Then come with me, Julian challenged, stepping closer. He could smell the sandalwood cologne Alaric wore, intoxicating and masculine. Unless the Great Iron Duke is too old for nightlife? Alaric's jaw tightened. Go to your room, Julian. Make me. The silence that followed was deafening. Alaric stared at him, his pupils dilated. For a second, Julian thought Alaric would strike him. Instead, Alaric grabbed Julian's arm, his grip bruising. You have no idea what you are provoking, Alaric whispered, his voice rough. You think this is a game? You think I am simply your father's friend. I don't know who you are, Julian whispered back, his heart hammering against his ribs. Because you never let me in. You bought me, Alaric. Whatever I am, I'm yours, aren't I? Alaric released him as if burned. I did not buy you. I redeemed you. He turned away, his back rigid. Go. Take the security detail. Be back by 2. Julian went, but the victory tasted like ash. He didn't want the club. He wanted the man who refused to break. The club was loud, sweaty, and overwhelming. Julian drank too much, trying to drown out the confusion in his head. He danced with strangers, letting hands roam over him, trying to feel something other than the magnetic pull of the man waiting in the tower on the hill. Around 1 a.m., the vibe shifted. 2 men cornered him near the VIP lounge. They weren't looking to dance. You're Richard's boy, one sneered, grabbing Julian's wrist. Pretty thing. Your dad owed my boss a lot of interest. The debt is paid, Julian slurred, trying to pull away. The principal was paid. The emotional distress? That requires a personal touch. Panic flared. Julian stumbled back, but they boxed him in. Just as the first man reached for his belt, the music seemed to stop. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Alaric was there. He hadn't sent security. He had come himself. He didn't look like a businessman now. He looked like a warlord. He wore a long trench coat, his eyes scanning the scene with lethal precision. He walked straight up to the man holding Julian, grabbed him by the throat, and slammed him into the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. I believe, Alaric said, his voice terrifyingly calm, that I made it clear the Vance boy is off limits. The thug gagged, clawing at Alaric's hand. Thorne, we didn't know. Alaric dropped him. Leave. Before I decide to expand my property portfolio to include this building and burn it down with you inside. The men scrambled away. Alaric turned to Julian. The rage in his eyes was terrifying, but beneath it was naked fear. He stripped off his coat and wrapped it around Julian's trembling shoulders. "Home," Alaric commanded. The drive back was silent, but the air was charged with static. Alaric dragged Julian into the penthouse, bypassing the staff, marching him straight into the master study, the one room Julian was forbidden to enter. "Sit," Alaric ordered, pointing to the leather sofa. He poured a glass of amber liquid, downed it, and poured another. "I didn't ask you to come," Julian mumbled, clutching the coat. It smelled of Alaric, safety, and smoke. "You are reckless," Alaric roared, slamming the glass down. "Do you have any concept of the world you live in? I spent millions clearing your name, wiping the slate clean, and you throw yourself into the wolf's mouth to spite me. I wanted you to look at me," Julian shouted back, standing up, the coat slipping off his shoulders. "I'm sick of being the charity case. I'm sick of being Richard's son. I'm right here, Alaric. I'm alive, and I'm alone, and you're the only person I have, but you treat me like a ghost. I treat you like a ghost because if I treat you like a man, I will destroy you," Alaric bellowed. The confession hung in the air. Julian froze. "What?" Alaric ran a hand through his hair, turning away, pacing the length of the room. "Why do you think I left 5 years ago? Why do you think I let your father ruin himself?" He stopped, gripping the back of a chair. "Richard wanted to use you. He wanted to marry you off to the daughter of the cartel head to settle his debts. I threatened to kill him if he touched you. He told me I had no right. He told me." Alaric's voice dropped to a whisper. "He told me he saw the way I looked at you. You were 17. I was 32. He was right. It was sick. So I left. I removed the temptation to protect you from myself." Julian felt the floor tilt. You left to protect me." "I stayed away," Alaric continued, his voice breaking. "I watched from the shadows. I waited until you were older, hoping the feeling would fade. Hoping you would find some nice boy at university, and I could just be the distant benefactor." He turned around, his eyes blazing. "But it didn't fade. You walked out of that car at the cemetery, and it was like I hadn't breathed for 5 years. Alaric." Julian took a step forward. "Stay back," Alaric warned, holding up a hand. "I am a dangerous man, Julian. I have blood on my hands that will never wash off. You are light. You are music. I am the silence that swallows it." "You're wrong," Julian said, his voice steady now. He realized the contradiction in Alaric's actions. A powerful man using the most complicated method, abandonment, to show love. "You didn't leave because you were dangerous. You left because you were afraid you weren't enough." Julian closed the distance. He walked right up to the line Alaric had drawn in the sand. "Don't," Alaric pleaded, but he didn't retreat. "My father is dead," Julian whispered, reaching out to touch the lapel of Alaric's suit. "I don't need a father. I don't need a guardian." He looked up, meeting those steel gray eyes. "I need you." Alaric grabbed Julian's wrist, his grip tight. "I am twice your age. I was your father's friend. The world will call it predatory." "Let them talk," Julian challenged. "You own the city, Alaric. Who dares to speak against the Iron Duke?" Alaric stared at him, the internal war raging behind his eyes. The restraint was crumbling. The uncle was dying. The lover was waking up. "I will consume you," Alaric warned, his voice a low growl. "If you cross this line, there is no going back. I don't share, Julian. I don't let go. You will be mine in every way that matters, and I will burn the world before I let anyone else touch you." "Good," Julian breathed. "Start burning." And then, the hook from the beginning of our story played out. The lightning flashed. The tension snapped. But instead of a gunshot, Alaric threw the revolver onto the desk with a clatter. He seized Julian by the waist, lifting him effortlessly and slamming him against the wall. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was a collision. It was 5 years of starvation, of denial, of guilt and lust crashing together. Julian gasped into the kiss, wrapping his legs around Alaric's waist, burying his hands in that silver-streaked hair. Alaric tasted of scotch and desperation. His hands were everywhere, claiming, mapping, branding. "Mine," Alaric growled against Julian's neck, biting down lightly on the sensitive skin. "You foolish, beautiful boy. You're mine." "Yours," Julian sobbed, arching into the touch. "Always yours." Outside, the storm raged on, washing away the remnants of the past. Inside, amidst the shadows of the penthouse, the line between guardian and lover was obliterated, leaving only two souls bound by a love that was forbidden, dangerous, and inevitable. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf, or perhaps, how the wolf finally allowed himself to be caught. If you enjoyed seeing Alaric lose his legendary control for the sake of love, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a man who abandoned you for 5 years if he did it to protect you from himself? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art. 2 men, BL, yaoi, man 1. Tall, muscular, broad shoulders, wearing charcoal vest and unbuttoned dress shirt, silver-streaked black hair, sharp jawline, intense gray eyes, scars on hands, dominant expression, older. Man 2. Slender, elegant, youthful, messy brown hair, wearing wet white silk shirt clinging to skin, vulnerable but defiant expression, sitting on mahogany desk. Background is luxury penthouse study at night, rain on floor-to-ceiling windows, lightning flash illumination, antique revolver on desk, spilled scotch glass, dramatic shadows, cinematic lighting, emotional atmosphere, intense eye contact.